The diplomatic incident. The crystalline spires of New Aurora Station caught the light of 3 different suns, sending rainbow fractals dancing across Cassandra Hayes's datapad. At 28, she was the youngest diplomatic envoy Earth had ever sent to the Stellaris Assembly, and she was determined not to let that fact intimidate her. Approaching Docking Bay 7, the ship's AI announced. "Please prepare for artificial gravity adjustment." Cassandra smoothed down her formal diplomatic uniform, checking her reflection in the viewport. Dark brown hair neatly braided in the traditional Earth Asian style her mother had taught her, regulation silver pins holding everything in place. The uniform's midnight blue fabric with silver trim represented Earth's hopes for peaceful relations with the Stellaris, a species known for their appreciation of aesthetic harmony. Remember, Ambassador Chen's message played in her mind, the Stellaris value precision and grace above all else. One wrong move could set our relations back decades. No pressure, she thought, gathering her materials as the ship completed its docking sequence. The station's gravity felt lighter than Earth standard, making her movements feel almost buoyant as she made her way through the airlock. A delegation awaited her arrival, tall, elegant figures with opalescent skin that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Their formal robes flowed like liquid starlight, making Cassandra's Earth uniform feel clunky and primitive in comparison. "Welcome to New Aurora Station," the tallest figure stepped forward, his voice musical in the way all Stellaris voices were. "I am Prince Torin, heir to the high seat. We are honored by Earth's choice of envoy." Cassandra bowed precisely at the angle her briefings had specified. "The honor is mine, Your Highness. Earth extends its gratitude for dash." A sudden shift in the station's gravity field sent her stumbling forward. Her diplomatic training kicked in automatically, reach for something stable, regain balance, minimize embarrassment. Unfortunately, the nearest stable object happened to be Prince Torin himself. Her hand brushed against the shimmering fabric of his ceremonial robe, right over his heart. A collective gasp echoed through the delegation. Torin's opalescent skin flushed with bands of color that Cassandra would later learn indicated surprise, amusement, and something else entirely. "I apologize," she started to say, but the prince held up a hand. "The heart touch," one of the older delegates whispered. "During the Aurora Grace. It cannot be coincidence." Cassandra's universal translator seemed to be struggling with the cultural context. "I'm afraid I don't understand. If I've caused offense dash." "Offense?" Prince Torin's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "You have just initiated the most sacred of our bonding rituals, during our holiest astronomical alignment. According to laws older than our space flight capability, we are now engaged to be joined." The translator definitely wasn't malfunctioning. Cassandra's diplomatic training had covered hundreds of scenarios, but accidentally getting engaged to an alien prince hadn't been one of them. "Surely there's some misunderstanding," she managed to say, her mind racing through potential diplomatic solutions. "I'm here as Earth's representative to discuss the trading alliance dash." "And now you shall be more than that," one of the older delegates stepped forward, his robes shimmering with what appeared to be actual starlight. "You shall be the bridge between our peoples. The prophecies spoke of such a union." Prophecies. Wonderful. Cassandra had specifically requested a posting that didn't involve any prophecies. "Your Highness," she addressed Torin directly, noting how the bands of color beneath his skin had settled into a steady, mesmerizing pattern. "While I'm deeply honored, I don't think Earth's diplomatic corps had this kind of arrangement in mind when they sent me." "The universe," Torin replied, with what she was definitely now certain was amusement, "rarely considers our carefully laid plans. Come, we have much to discuss, including why our gravity systems happen to fluctuate at precisely that moment, something they have never done in the station's entire history." As Cassandra followed the delegation, her diplomatic training was already shifting gears. This wasn't a disaster, she told herself. This was an opportunity. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she could hear Ambassador Chen sighing heavily. The next few hours passed in a blur of ceremonial procedures she hadn't been briefed on, cultural traditions she was apparently now bound by, and the growing suspicion that the random gravity fluctuation might not have been random at all. She found herself in a vast chamber with views of all three suns, Prince Torrens standing beside her as various officials debated the implications of their unexpected engagement. "I feel I should warn you," he said quietly, while the others were distracted, that declining the engagement would be considered an insult worthy of severing all diplomatic ties. "Also, there may be an assassination attempt or two." Cassandra barely stopped herself from laughing. "Is that meant to make me feel better about this situation?" "No," he replied, those color bands shifting again beneath his skin. "It's meant to make you understand that you're not the only one caught in events beyond your control. But perhaps together, we might turn this to both our people's advantage." Looking at him then, Cassandra saw something familiar, someone else trying to balance duty, tradition, and the completely unexpected. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the diplomatic disaster it appeared to be. "So," she said, "tell me more about these assassination attempts we should be expecting." The colors beneath his skin shifted to what she would learn was the Stellaris equivalent of a grin. "I think," he said, "this arrangement may work out better than either of us anticipated." Honor bound. Cassandra's new quarters in the diplomatic wing of New Aurora Station felt both alien and oddly familiar. The walls shifted colors with her moods, currently a swirling mix of blues and purples that she hoped didn't broadcast her anxiety to every passing Stellaris. The heart touch ceremony must be completed within 3 lunar cycles, her cultural advisor, a Stellaris elder named Verani, explained. Her skin rippled with patterns that Cassandra was beginning to recognize as concern. "Until then, you must learn our ways." 3 lunar cycles. Cassandra glanced at her datapad's calendar conversion. That's approximately 6 Earth weeks. To learn an entire civilization's customs and traditions. To become worthy of joining with the heir to the high seat, Verani corrected. Her robes shimmered as she moved, creating patterns that seemed to tell stories Cassandra couldn't yet read. "There are those who will oppose this union. You must be prepared." The gravity in her quarters shifted slightly, something she'd noticed happened whenever Prince Torren approached. Sure enough, the door chimed, and he entered with his usual fluid grace. Today his ceremonial robes were deeper in color, almost midnight blue, surprisingly similar to her Earth uniform. "I trust Verani is being thorough in your education?" he asked, those now familiar bands of color shifting beneath his skin. Cassandra had started keeping a private log of the patterns, trying to decode their meanings. "Very," she replied, standing to offer the formal bow she'd been practicing. "Though I'm still struggling with the 17 forms of ceremonial greeting." 19, Verani corrected automatically, then excused herself with a bow that probably incorporated at least 5 of those forms. Once they were alone, Torren's posture relaxed slightly. "You're adapting well," he said, moving to the viewport where all 3 suns were setting in sequence. "Better than many expected." "You mean better than those who think this is all an Earth plot to infiltrate the Stellaris hierarchy?" Cassandra joined him at the viewport, careful to maintain the proper distance their current status required. "I've heard the rumors." "Ah, so your information networks are already functioning." The colors beneath his skin shifted to what she was beginning to recognize as approval. "Good. You'll need them." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the final sunset. Cassandra found herself studying his profile, the way the fading light played across his opalescent skin. She'd been prepared for aliens to look alien, she hadn't been prepared for them to be beautiful. "There was another attempt to access the station's core systems today," he said finally, still watching the sunset. "More sophisticated than the last." "Internal or external?" "Both, which concerns me." He turned to face her, and Cassandra caught her breath at the intensity of the colors swirling beneath his skin. "Someone is very determined to prevent this union." "Because I'm human?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer was more complicated. Because of what our union represents. Torin stepped closer, and Cassandra felt the gravity shift again, pulling them subtly together. Change. Evolution. The breaking of old patterns. And some people prefer their patterns unbroken, she finished. A strand of hair had escaped her careful braid, and before she could stop him, Torin reached out to tuck it back into place. His fingers brushed her cheek, sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. Your temperature just elevated, he observed, those fascinating color patterns shifting rapidly. Is that a normal human response to physical contact? Sometimes, she admitted, wondering if her face was as flushed as it felt. It depends on the context. And the person. Fascinating. His hand lingered near her face. Your species' biological responses are so visible. We Stellaris keep everything beneath the surface. Except for these, Cassandra gestured to the swirling colors beneath his skin, currently forming patterns she'd never seen before. Which, by the way, are doing something new right now. Torin stepped back quickly, and she could have sworn the patterns showed embarrassment before settling back into their usual diplomatic configuration. Perhaps we should return to your cultural studies. Of course, she agreed, hiding a smile. I believe we were on ceremonial greeting form 12. Or was it 13? 14, he corrected, but there was warmth in his voice. Though perhaps we should focus on dance forms instead. The joining ceremony will require at least 3. Dance? Cassandra's diplomatic composure slipped. No one mentioned dancing. Did they not? Now he was definitely amused. How unfortunate. Shall we begin? The next hour passed in a blur of movement as Torin attempted to teach her the basics of Stellaris formal dance. It was unlike anything she'd learned on Earth, part dance, part martial art, part gravitational physics problem. Every time she thought she'd mastered a step, the gravity would shift, requiring a complete recalculation. This is impossible, she declared after her 10th stumble. How do you keep track of all the variables? The same way you keep track of 19 forms of ceremonial greeting, he replied, catching her as she missed a gravity shift. With practice, patience, and... He paused as their eyes met, proper motivation. The gravity shifted again, but this time Cassandra was certain it wasn't part of the dance. Something was changing between them, as subtle and inevitable as the setting of those 3 suns. She just wasn't sure if that change was making their complicated situation better or infinitely more complex. Perhaps that's enough practice for one day, Torin said, stepping back with formal precision. But the colors beneath his skin told a different story, one Cassandra was slowly learning to read. As she watched him leave, Cassandra realized she had a new problem to add to her growing list. Not only was she accidentally engaged to an alien prince, caught in the middle of political intrigue, and expected to master an impossible number of cultural protocols, she was also, against all diplomatic training and common sense, starting to fall for him. Well, she muttered to herself as the walls shifted to match her turbulent emotions, this should make the assassination attempts more interesting. The Resonance Protocol. The Quantum Research Station hung like a crystalline sculpture against the backdrop of the Carina Nebula, its prismatic surfaces reflecting bursts of cosmic radiation. Inside the central laboratory, Arya Solarin and Zoran Vax stood before a holographic display that pulsed with complex mathematical equations and spectral data. The quantum resonance is destabilizing, Zoran said, his translucent skin shifting with subtle iridescent patterns that reflected his emotional state. His species, the Lumina, communicated as much through chromatic changes as through spoken language. Arya's fingers danced across the interactive interface, recalibrating sensors and running rapid computational models. Her mind raced, connecting theoretical frameworks from 2 entirely different scientific traditions. The problem before them was unprecedented, a quantum anomaly that threatened to create a cascading disruption across multiple star systems. We can't approach this using traditional quantum stabilization protocols, she muttered, more to herself than to Zoran. The quantum entanglement is too complex. Zoran moved closer, his bioluminescent neural tendrils extending slightly, a gesture of collaborative intent among his people. Your Earth mathematics suggest an alternative approach. A breakthrough was forming in Arya's mind. The conventional methods from both human and Lumina scientific traditions wouldn't work. They needed something entirely new, a hybrid solution that bridged their technological understanding. What if, Arya began, her voice gaining excitement, we don't try to stabilize the quantum field, but instead create a resonance chamber that allows the quantum fluctuations to redistribute themselves. The research station's ambient lighting shifted, responding to the increasing electromagnetic activity of their experimental setup. Other Lumina scientists watched with a mixture of curiosity and cautious skepticism. Interspecies scientific collaboration was rare, and this project pushed the boundaries of established research protocols. Zoran's chromatic patterns swirled with a complex blend of colors representing intellectual excitement and strategic contemplation. A redistribution matrix, he translated, instead of suppression. Fascinating. Their fingers worked in tandem, programming a revolutionary quantum interface that would attempt to channel the destabilizing energy rather than contain it. Each movement was a delicate dance of cultural and technological translation, human precision meeting Lumina intuitive complexity. Hours passed. The station's artificial environment cycled through simulated day and night, but neither Arya nor Zoran noticed. Their focus remained absolute, interrupted only by occasional exchanges of technical insights and theoretical provocations. Your approach challenges fundamental assumptions in quantum mechanics, Zoran observed, a note of admiration in his voice. Arya smiled. Science progresses by challenging assumptions. If we always followed established rules, we'd never discover anything truly revolutionary. The quantum simulation began to take shape, a mesmerizing holographic representation of potential energy pathways that seemed to breathe and pulse with living complexity. Blues, greens, and ultraviolet frequencies danced in intricate patterns, representing potential quantum states that had never been mapped before. Suddenly, a warning alarm erupted. The quantum simulation began to destabilize, energy signatures spiking beyond predicted parameters. Containment breach imminent, a Lumina technician called out. Arya and Zoran exchanged a single, intense look. Years of separate scientific training dissolved in that moment. They understood each other perfectly, not through words, but through a shared commitment to discovery. Their hands moved in synchronized precision, adjusting quantum dampeners, redirecting energy flows, creating adaptive algorithms that responded in milliseconds to the emerging quantum turbulence. The station trembled. External sensors showed massive energy fluctuations that could potentially damage the entire research installation. But within the central laboratory, Arya and Zoran remained calm, their collaborative focus an island of tranquility amidst cosmic chaos. Redistributing quantum potential, Zoran murmured, his neural tendrils now fully extended and interfacing directly with the computational matrix. Arya's fingers flew across quantum interface terminals, her human technological intuition complementing Zoran's biomechanical precision. Slowly, impossibly, the quantum storm began to subside. The wild, unpredictable energy patterns gradually transformed into structured, manageable frequencies. When the final stabilization sequence completed, and profound silence descended upon the research station. The other scientists stared in astonishment. They had done the impossible. A truly collaborative solution that transcended individual scientific paradigms. Zoran turned to Arya, his chromatic patterns now displaying a spectrum of colors representing profound respect and emerging friendship. "We did it," he said simply. Arya nodded, understanding that this moment represented far more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a testament to what could be achieved when different intelligences work together, setting aside cultural and biological differences in pursuit of knowledge. The quantum resonance protocol was more than a technical solution. It was a bridge between worlds. Quantum entanglement. The research station's alert systems screamed with urgent warnings. Massive gravitational anomalies were building near the outer perimeter of the Carina Nebula, threatening to create a catastrophic quantum cascade that could potentially destroy multiple star systems. Arya Solarin stood at the primary control station, her hands moving with lightning precision across holographic interfaces. Zoran Vax positioned himself beside her, his bioluminescent neural tendrils interfacing directly with the station's advanced quantum computing systems. The gravitational distortion is accelerating, Zoran reported, his chromatic patterns shifting to deep crimson, a lumina indication of critical concern. Our previous stabilization protocol is insufficient. Arya's mind raced through potential solutions. The quantum resonance they had developed was elegant but untested against a threat of this magnitude. Years of scientific training fought against the impossible challenge before them. "We need a containment strategy that can adapt in real time," she muttered, pulling up complex probability matrices. The holographic displays around them flickered with millions of potential quantum scenarios, each more dire than the last. A senior Lumina researcher approached, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the intense light of the computational displays. The gravitational wave is now approaching critical mass. If we cannot redirect or contain it within the next 17 standard time units, the resulting quantum cascade will create a rupture that could destabilize entire galactic sectors. The stakes couldn't be higher. Zoran's neural tendrils began to pulse with an intricate pattern of bioluminescent communication. "I'm detecting microfluctuations in the quantum field that don't match our previous predictive models. Something is different." Arya zoomed in on the anomalous data. What she saw defied everything she understood about quantum mechanics. The gravitational distortion wasn't just a natural phenomenon, it seemed almost intelligent, adapting and responding to their attempts at containment. "It's learning," she whispered. "Whatever this is, it's not just a random quantum event. It's responding to our interventions." The research station began to tremble. External sensors showed massive energy buildups that threatened to overwhelm their defensive systems. In the observation deck, other scientists watched in a mixture of terror and fascination as the cosmic threat grew closer. "We need a completely new approach," Arya said, her voice cutting through the rising tension. "Something that doesn't just respond to the anomaly, but communicates with it." Zoran's chromatic patterns swirled with a complex blend of colors representing both intellectual excitement and deep concern. Communication. With a quantum gravitational anomaly? Arya's fingers flew across the interface, pulling together a radical theoretical framework. Not communication as we understand it. A quantum resonance that matches its fundamental frequency. We need to understand its intrinsic nature, not just try to contain it. The station's chief of security approached, her technological augmentations humming with potential defensive capabilities. "We have combat-grade quantum disruptors that could." "No." Arya and Zoran shouted simultaneously, then exchanged a quick glance of mutual understanding. Weapons would only escalate the threat. They needed understanding, not confrontation. Zoran began to interface more deeply with the station's quantum computing systems. His neural tendrils extended fully, creating a living bridge between biological intelligence and advanced technological networks. "I'm detecting pattern recursions," he reported. "The anomaly isn't random. It's a message. A complex, multilayered communication attempting to." Suddenly, the entire research station was bathed in a brilliant quantum light. The gravitational anomaly seemed to pause, as if listening. Arya realized they were on the precipice of something extraordinary. This wasn't just a scientific challenge. It was first contact of the most fundamental kind, communication at the quantum level itself. "We need to respond," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Not with force. With understanding." The fate of multiple star systems hung in the balance, balanced on the razor's edge of scientific innovation and cosmic mystery. Convergence. The quantum anomaly pulsed with an almost sentient energy, suspended in the vast darkness between star systems. Arya and Zoran stood at the epicenter of a moment that would redefine humanity's understanding of the universe. "It's waiting," Zoran said, his chromatic patterns shifting to a mesmerizing blend of deep blues and silvery whites. "Communicating through quantum entanglement in a language we've never encountered before." Arya's hands moved across the holographic interface, creating a complex mathematical language that transcended traditional communication barriers. Each equation was a potential bridge, each calculation a diplomatic overture to the cosmic intelligence before them. The research station had become a crucible of scientific possibility. Lumina and human researchers worked side by side, their previous cultural differences dissolved by the magnitude of the moment. Advanced sensors captured every minute fluctuation, every quantum whisper of the anomaly. "We're not just observing," Arya murmured, "we're engaging in the most profound dialogue humanity has ever attempted." The anomaly responded. Not with aggression, not with destruction, but with a cascading wave of quantum information that threatened to overwhelm their most advanced computational systems. It was like trying to drink from a cosmic fire hose of pure information. Zoran's neural tendrils interfaced directly with the station's quantum computing matrix. The data patterns, they're recursive. Each layer contains multiple levels of meaning. It's not just information. It's a form of consciousness we've never imagined. Emergency protocols flickered across the station's systems. The quantum anomaly was pushing the limits of their technological understanding, creating computational challenges that seemed impossible to resolve. "We can't contain it," a Lumina researcher called out, "we can only attempt to understand it." Arya's mind raced. The solution wasn't about blocking or fighting the anomaly, but about creating a resonance, a harmonic convergence of different forms of intelligence. "Quantum entanglement," she said suddenly, "isn't just a physical phenomenon. It's a form of communication." Her fingers danced across the interface, creating a complex quantum algorithm that was part mathematical equation, part linguistic bridge, part philosophical inquiry. She was writing a message in the fundamental language of the universe. The station trembled. External sensors showed impossible readings, gravitational waves bending in patterns that defied known physics. The anomaly was responding, not with destruction, but with curiosity. Zoran moved closer to Arya, their collaborative energy creating a unique field of scientific possibility. "We're witnessing something beyond first contact," he said. "This is a meeting of intelligences at the most fundamental level of existence." Hours passed. Or perhaps moments. Time itself seemed to become fluid, flexible, a construct as malleable as the quantum field they were exploring. Finally, a breakthrough. The anomaly began to stabilize. Not through force or containment, but through understanding. It was as if the cosmic intelligence recognized something in their approach, a shared curiosity, a mutual desire to explore and comprehend. "We've done it," Arya whispered, though "done" seemed too small a word for what had just occurred. The quantum anomaly began to dissipate, leaving behind a trail of data so complex it would take generations to fully decode. But the immediate threat was gone. More importantly, a connection had been established. Zoran's chromatic patterns showed a spectrum of emotions impossible to fully translate: wonder, excitement, profound respect. "This changes everything," he said. Arya nodded. They had not just averted a cosmic catastrophe. They had opened a door to a new understanding of intelligence, of communication, of the very fabric of reality. Outside the research station, the Carina Nebula continued its eternal dance of creation and destruction. But something had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and the universe was far more alive than anyone had ever imagined. As the station's systems began to return to normal, Arya and Zoran looked at each other, two beings from different worlds, united by a moment of extraordinary discovery. The convergence was complete.